Council of Atwater. Start with the roll call.
Ambrose? Here. Kale?
Here.
Raymond? Rochester?
Here.
Nelson?
Here.
We have a quorum.
So the meeting today is, we're having a discussion and direction regarding goals, priorities, and citywide strategic planning. And city manager is going to take over from here.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here this morning. It's not normal that we have a Saturday meeting, but we figured we could hopefully get some attendance here, and looks like we had to put out some more chairs, so that's always good. I just want to welcome everyone this morning and talk about how we can bring everyone's ideas together and through the strategic workshop and tell you what a strategic plan is and what it isn't. So a strategic plan helps the city council and the community put on paper the plans and goals and objectives that we have over the next 5 years. And in that time frame, we know that there will be some changes that happen throughout the city. And so we want to have the ongoing goals as well as one-time goals that we can complete during that time frame. The strategic plan works side by side with the annual budget, but it's different from the budget. So the strategic plan has a longer term vision, and the budget is, which we talked about on Tuesday, is over the next 12 months. What are we planning on spending the city's money on? So the budget, of course, is part of the plan. I mean, it's a planning document in and of itself. But the strategic plan is it's more broad. It's also linked in staff reports. When we have staff reports that go to council, we're referencing the strategic plan. So just a little background on where we're at here. We had a strategic plan document that was created about 5 years ago, and it covered 2020 through 2025. And that strategic plan document, it had 6 sections, and each section was, which you can see actually, there's 3 on this wall over here, and there's 3 over there on that wall. And then 2 years ago, there was another strategic plan workshop where the city looked at that 5-year plan and did a supplement and took some things from that plan, did not everything from that plan, but some of the things from the plan, added a couple new things, and that was kind of a refresh of the strategic plan. So what we've done is I got together with staff, and we're looking at these plans, and we're preparing for this meeting. And so we have some ideas that we want to share, and we want to hear from you, from everybody, and we want to what we're looking at is the older plan, the one from 5 years ago, is more comprehensive and it had more to it. And so it looks like a better foundation document to go off of. So in your packet, you'll see there's just on the back of the first page, that is the beginning of that 5-year plan. And it's got 9 pages, eight pages. And then after that, you'll see a resolution, and that resolution is for the plan that happened just 2 years ago. So at the final pages of this, what you have in your packet here are from the more recent strategic plan that happened just a couple years ago. So what we're hoping to do here is, as we go through that plan from 5 years ago, we want to make changes. We want to add things, remove things if needed, cross things off the list that we've already completed, and really make this plan up to date so that moving forward, we're moving forward as a city. So I want to start us off. We're going to have a little activity, and this is called a Mentimeter. So there's a live poll that we're going to do, and you can use your cell phone to take care of this. And so I'm going to need some assistance from the team here. But we've got a QR code that you can scan. And if everyone has a cell phone, you can walk over there and scan it. Okay, the question on this Mentimeter poll is, what should the priorities be for the city? And we're just gonna take a couple minutes, and you can write, you can enter a word, you can enter, 3 words. And it doesn't have to be a sentence, it can be just like a phrase or a word. For example, it could be park maintenance, parks. We could, what are the priorities? Do we want to do our streets are a real big priority? Is water quality a really big priority? So we want to hear from you, and what this is going to do is put all of these together, and it creates a mental map. It's called a Mentimeter, and it has the bigger the word is at the end, the more frequent that word was input as a priority. So we kind of have an idea of what that. This is just kind of a fun thing to kind of an icebreaker, we'll call it. And this is something that we can put into the plan on one of the pages. So you can already see people have got park maintenance, public safety, streets. So we'll just take a couple minutes and we'll type in what we like here. If you missed it, if you're coming in, you can scan that QR code on the screen, and then you can join us on this little poll. And if you'd rather share a written comment, we could take it on a card and we can put it into the system too, on the back end, just to make sure if you don't have a phone or if you don't want to use your phone, we could do that too. We have pens on in the back. There's a couple pens in the cup back there. Raise your hand if you need a little bit more time. Or if you're good. Everyone's good. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. This is also available. We're streaming the meeting, so if anyone's joining us remotely, then you could do the same thing. So we appreciate that. Okay. So the next part is we're looking at the 6 different sections of this document. So we have ensure financial solvency, that's number 1. Promote safety and stability. Promote transparency through communication. Optimize organizational structure. Promote economic development, and improve quality of life. So under those 6 broad goals, this next part of over the next, we'll say 10 minutes. If you have a pen, great. There might be one on your chair, or we've got extra pens. But I'd like to just take 10 minutes so that people can wander around, and you can go to these different sticky notes on the wall and just write what you think needs to be there, so that we want to capture your ideas. And I think if we spend the next 10 minutes doing that, so if everyone wants to stand up, we can start moving around and just write what you think needs to be under each of those categories. And this is for everybody, the staff, the council, the public, everybody.
I have some too.
Oh, we've got extras here.
Colors.
Anybody want a marker? Keith, one? Another marker? All right, sure.
Yeah, take them here.
So this part could take, you know, good 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more if you have some ideas. But this is the part where we're gathering a lot of ideas in. This isn't the only part. As we go through the meeting, we may, teach our brains to figure out other things. We may have some, creative juices for them. Also, we have refreshments over here, bagels and orange juice and stuff, and bathrooms are down the hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just delete it. I was gonna add that. No, that's it. Yeah. I was thinking just right there to show that they're in line. Demolition whatever.
Maybe like organizational structure.
But it wasn't, that was a private RV dream fest, everybody get booze up, go out skating kind of event, but again, it's not, that wasn't like, if you know, during our days where we're open and stuff, like, if the city wanted to come out, information, what's going on, engagement, you know, just show that they're like, I don't know how to do it, they budget so much, put money into their budget where they can help community, nonprofits and stuff like that, they can apply for help and stuff in the city. The city can get involved, they want community plans, beautification. I don't know, yeah, exactly, I mean, I don't know whatever happened with any of that stuff. You know, there's a lot of different economic development, I don't know what economic development is happening. I don't think any economic development happened. Everything was the city, high five, big brothers, big moms, all that stuff.
Oh, they will.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to fight them.
I'll just put this back right here.
Yeah. Well, but actually,
They're gonna go stick it to their benefit themselves.
they just take the time. Yeah, I agree, you know. So,
So, yeah. If we have to, maybe. I've got some ideas. Yeah.
I know
I remember plenty of ones that I was, that I lived in the night factories or one outside the city limits. Spending, all the money they spend. Did we pay any?
On the survey,
Oh,
bigger the words.
South Curtis,
Yes.
besides the 653,000.
So if you're thinking that you may have run out of ideas, one thing you could do is take a look at the old plan
Oh,
5
okay.
years ago.
Oh, okay.
And if there's something from there that speaks to you, then you can write that.
Has anyone come out to it? I can check. Usually, you know, besides the 653,000.
But every year we pay.
We've always come out of general fund in the past. It has to by law. 653,000, and if you roll that money, higher costs. That's what it's for. I try back in the Secretary of State. It's just misuse of funds.
more time to write, I think they want to write for history. I'll wait a couple more minutes. Everybody satisfied? Want some refreshments? Yep. Oh, no. Anybody have anything they wanted to write still, or good that? We're good? Okay. Okay, thanks for your participation in doing this. And so this next part is these first three sections. I'd like to go through and talk about the ideas that we have here, and figure out where we land on this. And then the idea. Oh, I probably need a microphone. I feel like I can project kind of a little bit, but maybe this is a little bit better. Should I start over? Oh, yeah, I should start over. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so the idea for this next section, this next part of the workshop is to go through these first three sections, and I'll read through, and we've got these ideas from the past as well, from the old 5-year plan, and there's probably ideas that we have from any of the bodies here that would like to share them. So, and I'll write some more on here, and the concept is we get all of these, and when we're done with the meeting, we're taking these and we type them all out. We'll take a picture of them, and so that there's a record, so everyone can see, here's what we have, and type them out, and then draft a strategic plan document that involves the ideas that we're talking about today, and then bring that to the city council for review and approval in the future. It could be in June or July when we're able to do that. Okay, so the first section is ensure financial solvency. And I'll read these. So fiscal decisions that are data-driven, need financial cushion in case of emergency. Don't spend the whole wad of money at once. Stay within the financial means, and remember the money belongs to taxpayers. Okay, so I think, yeah, comments, please. Can you break down how the city gets its money?
Sure.
Where the money comes from, that gives probably everybody here an idea of
Great.
what we're yelling and screaming at.
Great point.
Certain things.
Yeah, great point. And so I will give it my best shot of covering everything that I know about, and I'll ask if Anna Nicholas, our finance director, if I'm missing anything, maybe you could jump in. You just raise your hand and I'll give you the mic. Okay, so we primarily get most of our funds through two types of taxes: property taxes and sales taxes. Property taxes are, in a way, sort of limited. There was a law that was passed years ago, Proposition 13, Prop 13, and it limits the growth of property taxes that cities and counties, everyone's allowed to increase. And whenever there is a sale of property and transfers ownership, then it goes to the market rate. But if someone holds on to property for a long time, then it's only going to increase a little bit by a little bit, and it doesn't keep up with inflation. It doesn't really keep up with the market. So when there's a lot of real estate transactions, then the property taxes often will kind of like grow a little bit because we're going up. But when the economy is kind of stagnant and there's not a lot of real estate transactions, then we're kind of, it just grows very slowly. It doesn't keep up. The other type of tax is sales tax. So sales tax is, and we also have Measure B, which is the public safety transactions and use tax that was passed by voters in 2022, and that's a 1% tax that's added. So when you look at when you buy something and you're paying the taxes, it'll show the tax rate, 1% of that is going to be for public safety. And then close to 1% of that is going to be just for general fund city services, that sort of thing.
I'll make it easy for you. Just break it down, and how much of the city budget is based on property taxes, how much is based on sales tax, and how much of it comes from the state and the Fed.
We get hardly any money from the state and the Fed. And so, the exact number for Measure B, I think is around $5 million. And I think for just the regular sales tax that goes to our general fund, I think that is roughly $5 million as well, close to that. And then property taxes, it's kind of in the same ballpark. So all of those, they add up and they're helpful, but there are other ways that the city gets money. So the city collects water, sewer, garbage rates from ratepayers, and that goes into enterprise funds. For example, the water enterprise fund, the sewer enterprise fund, and those funds pay for maintenance and upgrades and that sort of thing. So we have a bond in place because the city had a wastewater treatment plant that was built several years ago. I don't know the exact year that it was built, but that kind of adds to what we needed to have for the sewer rate. And from time to time, the city does studies, and we'll hire a consultant to help, a third party to help us with the study to show, what is a fair amount for us to charge the ratepayers based on it, what's needed in order to operate those different enterprises. Yeah, Linda.
Yes, could you repeat again, the Measure B? Could you repeat again to us the Measure B funds and where it comes from and how it's spent?
Yeah, so Measure B is the public safety transactions and use tax. And we have it's a measure that was passed in 2022. There's an ordinance that is in that measure. That ordinance became part of our municipal code. So it's in code section 3.45. It talks about what the rules are for and how it works, how we collect it. It goes into a special account that we can only spend it on specific public safety purposes, and it details that. And part of that code explains that it needs to be that we need to have a public safety expenditure plan or a program guidelines and public safety expenditure plan, and that clarifies what we can spend that Measure B money on. So there's 3 broad categories for public safety. There's equipment and apparatus, so that would be, guns for cops, the fire truck, that sort of thing. Salaries and benefits is the second, and the third is other police protection or fire protection services that the city council deems is necessary for the benefit of the residents of the city. So separate from this meeting per se, because we've got that kind of on, it's a separate track. We talked about it on Tuesday night, the public safety expenditure plan. Of course, if you have ideas on that, share them here, but we talked about that plan, and I'll be bringing back, that was a draft, I'll be bringing back a version for the council to review at a future council meeting, that public safety expenditure plan. Does that answer the question?
Pretty much.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Where are your resources required to be spent by law?
You
Say it again?
Yeah, where does the Atwater budget, how much of that money is already regulated to be spent on certain items, and it's kind of locked in?
I mean, there are certain rights that folks have if there's a union and they've negotiated a memorandum of understanding, then they've got certain benefits. So we have to, if we have those employees, we've got to pay those benefits. It's not like so much like the federal government that there's like, you know, the social security and different things that have to, like, their obligations to be spent. But we do have important projects and programs that, you know, are the core function of the city. So public safety, we're not really a city if we don't have public safety. We're not really a city if we don't have public works. And we have support services, we call them central services, that help run the organization, HR, you know, human resources, finance department. We're not really a city if we don't have a land use authority. So we've got a community development department. They process building permits and planning permits and rezones and that sort of thing. Yeah, sir.
The example I'm using is like the school board, they'll always tell you 78% of their budget's already been pre-spent before they get it. They're kind of locked into where that money's going, they just have, you know, 10, 15% of their budget to play with.
Yeah, so the closest thing to that would probably be our personnel, because although in the worst case scenario, we would let people go in order to meet budget goals.
But what I'm saying is, what is state-driven or state law or federal law that controls you?
You have any insight on that?
What might help is understanding the general fund is the largest source of revenue that the council has at their discretion to spend without restriction. Whereas the enterprise funds are based on user fees. For example, a water rate or a sewer rate is set in accordance to what is required to meet the operations and maintenance and debt service of that fund, and those revenues are required to stay within that purpose. Grants are specific to whatever purpose the grant is for. Typically, those are non-discretionary. They have to be used within that purpose that you seek the grant.
That makes sense, I was just asking how much of that grant money is tied into you guys.
It's a little different than the county and the school board. We don't, typically our grants are a lot less than the county, and so like at the.
10% of your budget, 20% of
It depends on the project. It really just depends on the project, and most of ours are transportation related. If we were to get any type of, you know, if we have any projects that go on that we could seek out grant. Our grant activity is fairly limited, and it's project specific typically. So in terms of the largest discretionary source of revenue, that's anything that's coming into the general fund, and Chris outlaid the majority of it. There's also sales tax and property tax are our largest drivers of general fund revenue. There's also different licenses, permits, and fees that go in there. You also have transient occupancy tax, which is hotel motel tax. That is a general fund tax that people visiting our city, if they stay in one of our hotels, will pay that, and that goes to general purpose. You have, at the current time, we have cannabis tax that goes into general fund. So that's the largest discretionary source of revenue. Pretty much everything else is locked into their program-specific purpose.
Yes, Linda?
We're talking about enterprise funds. Should Measure B funds be classified as a special fund enterprise? Because there are certain places you can spend it only.
Yeah, it's definitely a special fund.
Here it is.
It's a
Say that again?
It's definitely a special type of
Thank you.
fund. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, and thank you for joining us. Just talking about a few of the things here, the fiscal decisions that are data-driven, that's currently not anywhere on here, but that's definitely something we can add. Need financial cushion in case of emergency. There is actually a section here, if you want to turn to the page with me. I'm looking at the ensure the city's continued financial stability page. It's section 1. And under 1.1A, 1.1.A, it says set aside funds to achieve 10% of the general fund in reserves. So a financial cushion in case of emergency, that could be that, you know, rainy day fund that's in that reserve. So the question is 10% enough? Currently, we have more than that in our cushion, but our policy says 10%. So does anyone want to speak to that?
It should be great.
Okay, should be increased, and you, by the way, there's a mic there. Yeah, Myra?
I was just gonna ask, what do we currently have, how much do we currently have?
Okay, so there's a certain $1 million amount. I think it's,
Like the percentage?
So, yeah, so the current budget of current fiscal year 24-25 is, the projected fund balance will meet the 10% required reserve in addition to the 25% goal reserve and some extra that's in there that's undesignated. And the budget that we just presented earlier this week, also meets that. So, at the end of the next fiscal year of 25-26, if the estimates come to fruition, we're looking at it's about a $15 million, I don't have the specific number, $15 million fund balance. So what that does is it meets a 25% reserve of the current fiscal year estimated expenditures, and then there's undesignated fund balance. The council has, I think it was 2019 that the council put in the general fund reserve policy of 10%, and so that helped to put in a guardrail for exactly that, starting to make sure that there's cushions, and up until then there wasn't. There's some consideration though to be given in terms of increasing that. 10% is excellent, but it needs to be better. It is, to Councilmember Raymond's point, it is a little low. Also, each agency runs different risks, and so this is where, you know, it's something that can get better in time. You can increase it, but then also looking at what is the risk for Atwater? What is the risk if, say, you know, some agencies might have kind of operate such as like a company town. They have one major employer, and if that one major employer were to leave and take that sales tax base, that's a huge risk. And so agencies need to set their reserves significantly higher. And so we, as we go through the course of the next few years, it's something that takes time, but it's something to help you fine-tune that risk level even better, where you look at what is Atwater's risk in terms of like the general fund's revenue base.
I think it's important for us to also understand if we increased the cushion to 25%, let's say, and something, you know, unfortunate, catastrophic happens in Atwater, how long would the city be able to run based on 25% if we did that increase estimate? How many months?
I mean, that would be about 3 months, right? So 25, because if our operating expenses are 12 months worth in the budget, and 25% of that would be a quarter, so that's 3 months. Yep. That would be worst case scenario, and we have more than that right now. I would say significantly more than that. I mean, it helped that we had ARPA to help fill up the tank. That's not going to last forever, but we're also not spending that money that helped fill the tank up. Like we do have a structural deficit. So a couple years ago, the budget was at about a $2 million structural deficit, and last year we got it down to just under $1.2 million of a structural deficit, which means we're spending more than we're bringing in. And with the proposed budget that we talked about on Tuesday night, it's closer to about $350,000. So we've made significant improvements, but there's still more work to do. There's more, and so that's what we're talking about. How can we not only reduce costs, but also bring in new revenue? If we could do both of those in tandem, then we'll be in a better financial picture. So yeah, that is about 3 months to answer your question. Yes, Linda.
Okay, I know you all have, sorry. I know you all heard me harp at each council meeting about Measure B, and how I feel it's being misused, okay? And I still feel that way because of how you've spent the money out there. Like past due bills, CalPERS, many millions we're in debt to. You've got 3/4 of your police department coming out of Measure B, and you're using it as a slush fund. To me, cops are number one. Over all you guys, I could care about you guys. Police is number one. And if Measure B is depleted, those police, how you gonna pay them? And I think you ought to start planning that way. I think you've used Measure B to the point where you've misused it. And I hate to keep complaining about it, but it's very, very important to me. Like I put up there, cops, 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 police. You're so
Yeah.
behind, and don't laugh, it's not funny.
I liked it.
Because you don't live in this county. If you needed a police officer right now or a member of your family, you might have to wait a while, because it's one officer per 1,000, and we're about 32,000 population, and you have 26 sworn officers, but not all those sworn actually take call.
Yeah, thank you for that. So.
You're welcome.
So what if, in light of that idea, what if we had not just a fund reserve policy for the general fund, but we also had one for Measure B? Because it's its own account, right? So what if we said, we want to have a rainy day fund, not just for the general fund, but we need to have it in case things go south with the economy, and now what are we going to do? We need to have something in place for Measure B as well, and we don't. We don't have anything set up for that right now. So what could that be? Are we looking at like,
Quit spending the money, Glenn.
Where would that money come from? I mean, if you're saying it's catastrophic and things wouldn't, be right.
from the account
You're talking
balance?
about a supplemental for what is supposed to be a supplemental. Does that make sense? I mean, as Linda says, and I'm a huge, critic of the expenditures that have come from Measure B. And I think as I put up there, stay within the means, that is what I mean by stay within the means. Stay within the letter of the law, within the language of the ordinance, and do the expenditure. I mean, all the promoting leading up to Measure B.
Oh,
was
Mike B, please.
All of the expenditures and everything that are going on that, in my estimation, are not in accordance with the ordinance, none of that was ever brought up, leading up to the vote on Measure B. So you've got a lot of money going out of there, and I see within the Section 2 Public Safety here, third item down here, 2.1.B, you've got explore potential public support for a public safety tax.
Yeah, that's from the plan 5 years ago. So we can cross that off the list because we passed Measure B.
Okay, and here's the thing. We were told that it was going to be $4 million. Typically, we've got like 2 million is what I see on an average of a balance in there. So, which tells me that we were spending somewhere in the $2 million range and have a $2 million
Account
fund
balance.
left. Yeah, right. So, kind of what it tells me is Measure H was okay. It was doing $2 million a year too, but nonetheless, that's water under the bridge. But having money to back up money is not. And as you rightfully said, we've got to have sales tax, and not only sales tax, but point of sales tax. For example, NCI Building Systems, which I believe is under a new name out here, but nonetheless, the city gets that point of sale. And I know the people there. I've met with them over the years through my former business, and they went and moved around companies, the factories within their company to out-of-state locations. And I've always sweated that NCI money leaves out of here. That's huge. That point of sale money goes. That's going to be the hit that you're talking about. And the same thing with, say, like if Target or Walmart or something. Corporations make those kind of decisions all the time on closing certain locations. So it begs the question of, what the city intends to do with increasing that revenue. So, you know, because we're looking at, you know, the communities around us here, you know, Merced, Livingston, Los Banos, even Turlock and Ceres and places like that. Everybody's getting those businesses that are really substantial to those communities. We're not. We're getting gas stations and burger joints, which do nothing for us, and putting up more housing is not going to hack it either. Property tax is not going to sustain the chief's police force, the fire department, things like that. And Measure B, it isn't going to happen either. And our expenditures are going to get worse as time goes on because of the fact that certain things, for example, like the gas, you know, I mean, we go by, we see $4.50, $5 gas now. And it's not going to get any better no matter how the rest of the country, we're in California, and that is going to continue to be higher. So our services, the deliveries to stores, all that kind of stuff is going to continue to increase. So how are we going to, as a city, increase that revenue? And I've made it a comment to this in the past. This city needs to embark on a really aggressive marketing and promotional plan and look at where we can attract something. One hotel is all we have. We have plans for a second. I don't know where that's at, but as the finance director said, you know, TOT tax is great because it stays within the community. But the fact is, we've only got one hotel here, and the second one was supposed to go in. I don't know where that's at.
I'm gonna write TOT tax here.
Okay. But the thing of it is that we need manufacturing here. Simple as that. We need something that's going to be, you know, good paying jobs for people in the community here, and also provide sufficient revenue. The Ferrari Ranch area.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is
Right.
over there, and I'm gonna try to remember everything you're
Okay.
saying here so that when we get to that,
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Here, take that.
I love it. By the way, I just want to echo what you said, Jim. Residential development does not give the city as much in taxes as commercial development. That's just how it is. So,
Tom's driving commercial.
yes, so it's a symbiotic relationship. And really, industrial uses are like the backbone of that because they provide jobs that add value to the whole city because it's not circulating dollars like, you know, like the restaurants here. They're great, but they're really circulating dollars within the community. But when we're talking about big industrial or little industrial businesses, they're adding value because we're getting dollars from outside of this area, maybe outside the state even, or outside the country. So that's a real good way to like elevate the economy, the local economy. Great, thank you for that. Okay, so going back to like this 10%, 25%, is there any comment from the public or the council on a reserve fund policy changing? I heard Brian say, let's raise it. What should we raise it to?
I think 25 is a good point.
Okay, so I think this right here, it kind of goes into that and stay within the financial means. That's actually a different one that I'm going to bring up in a second. So I'm going to write 25% reserves.
Chris, can we also add the Measure B, maintaining a reserve amount for Measure B of 25%?
Okay, so I'm going to write general fund plus MB is Measure B. All right, thank you for that. Awesome.
I got one more question, it's liability. How do you guys handle like when an ambulance get hit or PD runs over somebody? Where's that money come from when they get a big payout?
Maybe I could lean on a department head for a better answer than
I
what
mean, you guys have insurance to cover that?
Yeah.
Or you guys?
Yes, so we have RMA, here, maybe Jenna, thank you.
We belong to a JPA, and that comes out of that pool. So it's not 100% the city.
Okay, now how much does that cost you guys per year, or is it based on your revenue?
It varies, and the Risk Management Authority is who sets that. and it varies by year, depending on what claims we've seen. And that, we use that for liability insurance and workers' comp.
That's what's both. And how much does that cost you guys a year?
It varies every year. I don't know what it is this year. Do you have the number?
Well, we can get you that answer, I mean, I just need a rough answer, I mean, yeah, I'm just curious more than anything else. I run a business, and that's one of the things we worry about is liability. Yeah.
You got my card, so I'll follow up. Okay, stay within the financial means. I think there's one in here that deals with that. Well, maybe if there's not, we could add one, because we really need to eliminate the structural deficit, right? So let's think about that. Should that be a goal? And should there be a time frame on that goal? We're getting close. You know, we're at 350,000.
I mean, within the next 2 years would be best.
Next 2 years? Okay.
Yeah, the way it's been going, I think it's doable.
Okay.
Chris, how did you arrive at the 350? I mean, it went from, what you say, 1.2 to 350. What did you do in
Yeah.
order to arrive at that?
So we had a great presentation on that Tuesday, and maybe for the highlights, maybe Anna, could you help with that?
So yeah, just to recap, what was gone over on Tuesday was the revenue estimates. Some of the revenues came in a little higher, and then some of the expenses that we were able to suppress in a couple of the departments. So it just really was a combination of fine-tuning some of the estimates. For revenue, it was sales tax, although it is considered a very flat increase. It was over 200,000 that we project for 25, 26. And then property tax, we, you know, assume a normal modest increase on that. But expenses, we had some position, an admin assistant and a community events coordinator that's not going to be filled. So there's some cost savings there. And yeah, and so on the structural deficit too, what's important to remember is it's all estimates. And also looking back in 23, I believe it was the year that the city signed the enhanced CAL FIRE agreement. And so costs went up significant that beginning then. So it kind of coincided with when Measure B started, but we also got a higher level of service through our CAL FIRE agreement. So trying to find ways to make sure that we can ensure paying that contract as well. So we're new into Measure B, but we're also new into an enhanced CAL FIRE agreement that we're trying to fund out of our general fund and Measure B fund as well.
Okay, thank you. And Keith?
Speaking about the fire department and our contract, the city owns all the equipment, the buildings, everything, and they're paying for the salaries of the fire department, for the employees. Have we ever looked into, would it be a cost savings if we went back to having our own fire department, not CAL FIRE?
That's something we can explore. Right now, we pay CAL FIRE a lump sum, and that goes up every year by 5%. But as far as exploring, are you saying exploring, go back to like an in-house fire personnel?
Correct. If the city owns all the equipment, the buildings, everything, you have a contract, I believe it was well over $3 million for that contract, and we're just paying basically for salaries. Would it be more cost effective if we went back to the old days and we had our own personnel, our own Atwater Fire Department? Would there be a cost savings?
Great question. So I know some cities have done that where they've gone from CAL FIRE back to in-house. And it's really like, we could add this, maybe we'll get some feedback from the council on this idea. Just to explore. It would just be to look at it, basically. I think that's what Keith is talking about. Because he's asking how much it would, what the difference in cost would be, and we'd have to explore that.
it's a possibility of looking at it, for sure, because you're right, we own all the equipment and the stations and whatnot. It's the people that we need, but
I'm only suggesting to look at it if there be a big cost savings for us, we should maybe explore this. If we're saying we're still in deficit in the general fund, and we can save money to $3 million help, so that's gonna save us money, maybe we should explore that.
All right, I wrote down that idea, explore in-house fire personnel. Thank you. Myra?
I have a question just connected to that. So within each department, different areas, and Keith's idea made me think of this. And so how, or who rather, is helping to keep a pulse on things like that? Like how we can consistently be looking at ways to save, you know, what other ideas outside of, say, meetings like this? Who has oversight over those kinds of things within the departments to make sure that we're always keeping that, you know, idea forward as far as how we can create cost savings?
This is absolutely a team effort. I know I talked with the finance director and the rest of the department heads about, you know, ideas of what we could do, and we have some ideas that I want to share on top of some of the things that we have here. And it's a team effort though, because lots of times we get ideas from public comments. So when people come to the city council meetings, we're like, huh, that's, like, we hadn't thought about that. So it's important that people speak up. That's how we get to the best idea. And we have, yeah, so I'd say it's a team effort. Okay. Thank you for your questions and comments. A couple other ideas. What if, so we put TOT tags there. We have, I'm just going to be a little bit brutally honest here. We have retirees that have benefits, certain benefits, and healthcare benefits, for example. In the plan from 5 years ago, it says explore options to reduce pension liabilities. Pension, I mean, CalPERS is pretty much locked in, so there's not much there. But what if we explored other things like healthcare benefits that retirees have? They go up every year, and the city's paying for that every year. Some cities I've seen, they've done different things, like they've said, here, we're going to cap it, and you need and we're going to give you a stipend, we're going to give you this amount of money, and then you need to find whichever healthcare provider that you're going to use. There's a myriad different options here, and this would be another thing to help us ensure financial solvency. I know it may be very unpopular with certain people, but maybe it's worth exploring. So I wanted to bring that up and share that with the room and see if there's any feedback on that.
I got a quick question about that. So if we're going to explore going away from CAL FIRE, wouldn't that increase our pension liability? So we would be doing the opposite of what you're just suggesting?
I wasn't talking about pensions. I was talking about non-pension, like healthcare. But it would increase our pension liability if we came off of CAL FIRE. That's part of that exploring the cost benefit of which way would be, because it would cost more in some ways, but maybe it costs less in other ways.
I would agree with what you're saying, Chris, in terms of us exploring the healthcare benefits for our retirees and maybe how, moving forward, I think it's important, you know, potentially to maintain what we have. If that's, I don't know what the requirements are legally for us to change benefits for retirees who have already entered into their employment and retired with the understanding that they would have those benefits available to them when they retire. But I think moving forward, I've seen cities change their policies for their retirees and providing them with a stipend instead of continued health care benefits. And then it would be the retiree's responsibility to go and find their own health care benefits upon retirement. But I think it's important when people are entering into contracts with the city to work here that they understand that coming in, and so we're transparent about that.
Yeah. I hear you. Yes, Robert.
Thank you for your presentation at this meeting workshop today. What is the unfunded liabilities that the city is facing? That is usually an issue that deals with retirement, of course, the health benefits. Is there an unfunded percentage that you try to match? Thank you.
Is that, Anna, is that something you can help?
I don't have the numbers with me, but for example, our current fiscal, the payment that we're going to pay for CalPERS, now, so this topic is on OPEB, other post-employment benefits. CalPERS is the pension liability, and so the UAL, which is the unfunded accrued liability, our payment this year, just that we owe in upcoming 25-26 is 2-point-something million. The total number I don't have with me. We could definitely get that. It's something that we have the data on that we could follow up with you if you like, and we could get through that number. Or are we going to post any questions or like answers? Yeah. So that all of that's on CalPERS, and we have the data for that. But every year we pay a portion of that. In general, our plans are about 70% funded in total with CalPERS. But we have several plans, and we have some PEPRA plans now too, so that kind of is helping us reduce our unfunded accrued liability. But typically any full-service city that has public safety and general services, you have some classic plans out there that have been expensive, and so we're still paying on that.
So are you maintaining 70% then? That's, I guess, are you looking to achieve a higher level?
You know, that could be a policy goal of council, is through the years trying to achieve a higher funded status. And in order to do that, like an example of what could be done is an ADP, which is an additional discretionary payment, where we might take one-time fund balance and set it down. But before doing any of this, you have to work with a CalPERS actuarial who will actually run the numbers. And we want to know before we say $3 million we take out of our general fund balance, we want to know that that's actually going to make a difference and move the needle in our CalPERS unfunded status. And so the actuaries work all of that out. However, and that's very time consuming by city staff and CalPERS staff, so it really would need to be a strategic initiative given the direction to staff, and then we'll go, okay, we're going to take the time and look into this. But there are some items like that, yeah.
Thank you. That was great. Don?
Generally speaking, also, if your employees, your regular hourly, salary employees are receiving CalPERS medical benefits, then those retirement benefits are tethered to that. So in order to abolish the CalPERS health benefits for retirees, you'd have to abolish the medical program overall, which is a very cumbersome program with CalPERS. They have cities and municipalities locked in, and that's not an easy process. In fact, you can't even get a quote from another company, for at least 3 months prior to an exit from CalPERS.
So I want to say that we're actually working on that right now.
Oh, you're working?
Yes. So and that could be something that I write down too. Is kind of review healthcare benefits. Now we don't want to like slash the benefits, but maybe there's a way for us to find a cheaper option, right? I probably need help with the scribe here. Maybe Gisela, could you help me write basically that idea up of, you can take this marker over here. So that I can keep talking, because, yeah, go ahead.
So on the OPEB, on the other post-employment benefit, what we're talking about in specific nature right now is the healthcare costs for retirees. And simply what we're doing is suggesting possibly looking at a cap, because then from a budgetary standpoint, you know how many retirees you have, and you know you're going to pay X amount of dollars per year. Whereas the insurance premiums just continue to grow, and we're stuck with that. And then when it comes to budget time, we just have to budget for that, and that's current dollars being taken from current employees, is when we're looking at benefits and everything for current employees. So From the budgetary standpoint, having a cap, it just gives you, you know exactly what you're going to be budgeting for year after year after year. And that way, whatever's happening in the insurance market is whatever's happening, but the city's not having to absorb that volatility.
So, yeah, go ahead, Linda.
We've been asking questions that deals with a lot of finance. Do you have in this building a laptop that maybe our finance director could pull up your budget? That way, if we ask how much is here and how much is there, she could, give us a little bit better answer.
Sure, we got the budget here, so as it comes up, we'll try to flip through it and see what we can do. Thank you. Okay, talking about all these cool things finance. By the way, I think probably this first section, I know we've been spending some good time on this. It's probably because it's the one that is top of mind for a lot of people and really, really important. Not that, sometimes you have a competing interests in your goals. For example, goal number 2, we want to hire more cops. And goal number 1 is we want to stabilize the budget. Well, we could hire more cops and then grow the structural deficit. It's kind of a balancing act, right? So sometimes there's competing goals. But I just wanted to mention that this first section right here that we're talking about finance is probably more, I think we have probably more ideas in this room about this one. So I don't want folks to feel like, well, if we need to have a second workshop, that's fine, but I think we'll be able to go through these other sections in a decent amount of time. I just want to check in on that. But let me just say one thing. So we have these cool ideas with finance. We need to make sure that we have the resources. We need to provide resources to finance to figure all this out. And that could be in the future, a financial analyst, a full-time financial analyst of some kind to help with some of the hairier problems that we're looking at. So maybe that's part of the solution, is to make sure that we're providing those resources. I just want to bring that up and see if there's any comment on that.
I don't think you need another in-house person, but you could have somebody contracted. Like, we used to use a guy named Bill Zanoni, who came in every so often just to go over all the numbers, help with reporting. I mean, because if you bring on someone else full-time, it's more liabilities.
Okay, so maybe not in-house, but some kind of resource like that, right? Okay, so let's write, provide resources to make financial improvements. Thank you for that. A couple other ideas. So we talked about eliminating the structural deficit in 2 years. We wrote that up there. We're currently working on some other stuff. For example, we want to have the fees that people pay align with what staff is actually spending hours to do. So last year, we spent some ARPA money to hire Willdan. It's a company that does this financial analysis for cities to help us with a few different things. One of them was a cost allocation plan. The second is a comprehensive user fee study, which we've never done before, and we're in the middle of doing that right now. And the third is a development impact fees. So I think in the next 5 years, well, actually much sooner than that, we'll have this, I think, done very quickly, but having that as a goal and completing that is something that the city's never had before. And updating our development impact fees, I mean, they're decades old. So I think this is something we're already in the midst of doing, but it's something that we can have. I think it would be good to have as goals to show the forward momentum that we've got. So I would say development impact fees and user fee study. We could talk about those. Another one is we have, now this is a little sensitive because it requires negotiation with the county, but we have a property tax sharing agreement with the county that was passed when Ferrari Ranch was being annexed, or right before it got annexed. And in that property tax sharing agreement, it says that citywide, we give 5% of our sales tax to the county. So that's something that, through negotiation, maybe as a goal, we could eliminate that. And I think, we could write something like that down where, negotiate fairer terms for a property tax sharing agreement. Does anyone have any comments on that?
Do any other cities in the county do that?
I don't believe any other cities have that 5% sales tax.
Was there a trade-off for that? Were they supposed to supply services for that 5%?
There was a trade-off because the previous property sales tax agreement had the previous one had something that got removed in the new one, and it was a per capita amount that was sent to the county. And I believe it was everything above 25 or 26,000 population, we would give the county per capita. That went away. So every time that it's negotiated, and again, this is a little sensitive because this hasn't been completed yet. I've had a couple meetings with the county, but I need to continue that. Every time that there's a negotiation, there's give and take. A lot of times the county, they have control because without an agreement in place, we can't do annexations at all. We just can't annex land. So in many regards, they have the cards, and we just have to figure out how to play with them. But we try to look at other cities and as a comparison and see what beneficial terms that we can get based on our neighbors. In Stanislaus County, recently, a couple years ago, the county did a kind of a master agreement with all the cities. We don't have that here in Merced County, but it was pretty favorable terms. It went from, for example, splitting the property tax revenues for the increment when you get development. That new development is the delta between vacant land, which is very low property taxes, and now you have a building there, and it's much higher property taxes. So the difference between the low and the high, you share that with the county based on that annexation area. And in many cases, the county gets 75% and the city gets 25%. In Stanislaus County, I believe it's 50-50. It's much better. So just looking at that and continuing those negotiations. Yeah, Linda.
Okay. It seems like Atwater's always on the short end of the stick. You know?
Yeah.
It's like you get screwed without a kiss. I'll be really honest. Because, okay, again, I complained about your hassle sewer for years. And it was, we're talking about it, we're meeting with the county, blah, 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 blah. And that's all we get is blah, blah, blah. But yet, we're only getting about $1,800 a month for their caca, okay? And nobody's doing anything. I think you guys ought to come in there with an army and say, okay, you're going to start giving us some more money, or we're gonna cut you off. You're saying that the county's saying that they won't annex unless we pay them this, it's blackmail. You know, so, and then as far as other things we're talking about, somebody in the city must hate kids, because BMX track shut down. The Tom Dash Memorial Speedway, that was demolished. The Atwater Police Association poured their heart and soul and money into that thing, and it was one of the best tracks in this whole state. Every time you turn around, you see a baseball field, football field, BMX, anything that has to do with kids. The weeds are growing and it looks like crap. You know, if you would kind of clean it up, open it up, you're gonna bring revenue in, because you're gonna have people coming from all over the state for tournaments, for races. They're gonna use motel, or what motel they don't have, restaurants, whatever. They'll buy groceries. I mean, you don't think about the long term. And plus, maybe less crime on the streets. So, I mean, you keep forgetting about this. And again, like I said, we always have the short end of the stick. They just say, well, you know, Atwater, they'll take it. You know, they won't say anything. We'll just add another $100,000 to the pot. The same thing with Fruitland. You know, those people in Fruitland have us over the barrel. You guys keep pouring money into that Fruitland. That's why you don't have any major league money or anything else.
Thank you.
It's you folks.
So youth programs are important. The PAL program is coming back. The BMX track, I'm glad you mentioned that. We're starting, we're having conversations. I'm meeting with different groups to get that back on, and we're at the very beginning of that process. But having that amenity, that community asset is important. It's just sitting there. And so what can we do with it? So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, Keith.
Annexing Ferrari Ranch, what's going on with that? I mean, we have a bunch of land just sitting there, and we got nothing out of it. There's 2 lots on Viewback, where they finally built a gas station. They've been empty since I've lived here since '73. What are we doing to bring stuff into here, and what's it gonna take to get Ferrari Ranch developed?
It's going to take a combination of us recruiting businesses to come in and development and talking with brokers and, the market showing that that's going to work, and also having the Atwater Merced Expressway, which sounds like they got past the EPA study that they needed to do, and they're going on to the next step. But having that AME completed is going to increase development there, speculation there, definitely. So yeah, that's a combination. Yeah, John.
I keep hearing all the time, how come no businesses are coming? Why can't we get businesses? I know 3 different letters that I've written to businesses. 2 of those letters I got no responses. And the third one was, Atwater's not applicable to our values. And here's the thing. So the median income for the city of Atwater, because I just looked it up, is $53,000 a year. The average cost of a house in Atwater is $400,000. The median income in Merced is also $53,000. The average cost of a house in Merced, $410,000. So let's look, Mr. Price brought up Turlock. Median income in Turlock is $79,000. Average cost of a house, $491,000. Las Vegas, $83,000 a year. House in Las Vegas, $475,000. Our goal should be, how can we increase the income? That's what it is. Who wants to come and put a business here in Atwater when 6 miles down the road, you got the same income and 60,000 more people? We're stuck in a huge hole. And I think one of the things that, we're not getting the sales taxes because they're not spending any money. And honestly, they don't have the money to spend. And that affects us being able to do the things that we should do because we're not getting the money. So my real question is, how do we get businesses to come in here that hire employees, that raise the income for less people? Mike and I toured Westmark last week, and I was like, this is amazing. This is what we really need. So we really need to be out attracting businesses to come here and do the things that we should do, and not, me personally, I don't want to see our small town atmosphere change. I sure would like it to get richer though. So that's what we should really be focusing on. Because yes, we we have a lot of hamburger places here in town because it's cheap. And our low-income families can go get a cheap meal. We don't have expensive restaurants, high-end restaurants here, because nobody has any money to spend in a high-end restaurant. I'd love to have a steakhouse in here. I could only go once a month, twice a month maybe. So that's what we should really need to be focusing on, is how we get that in here. And then alongside of that, we gotta be able to give housing to those people to be here. We have built apartment complexes since the 1980s. That's a shame. We tried to get one, and Chelsea folded, said no. And we fought hard for that. So my focus really should be on getting businesses here, raising our income, and finding houses.
Okay, real quick, yeah, I agree with John, and quality of life is a big thing for me, and that's why I always advocate for parks. We have a dramatic deficit in parks here in Atwater. I mean, I think it's supposed to be, what they usually gauge it by is like 6.5 acres per 1,000 residents, and we're not close. Were you gonna cut me off?
Yeah, I was gonna say, would it be fair if Gisela wrote increase parkland over their quality of life?
Yeah, I think I already put it up there.
Okay, good.
So, like I said before, rooftops drive commercial. Commercial will come if we get more rooftops. You look at any place like that. But look at, whenever all these studies come out on Facebook and Instagram and in the newspaper and magazines where they're like best places to live. And it's where people are moving to. It's where people are going. Look at where everybody's leaving to go to. They have amenities. They have good park systems. They have bike paths, things like that, recreational opportunities. A lot of that stuff is what is going to get our income levels up. Why is anybody going to want to come live in Atwater? I work in Merced every single day, and I'm kind of jealous. I've lived here my whole life, but I never realized how good their bike path system was, because I'm on their bike path system every single day. It's amazing. I mean, they need some work, obviously, and they are working on cleaning up. But we need things like that. We don't need just little pocket park stumped here and there with like one playground and equipment in it, and 2 years later it gets ripped out because we don't maintain it. And that's the easy thing to do, is just rip it out, like bathrooms and things like that. So definitely, I think we'll get the income levels up if we give things for people. I mean, the higher paid employers, look, everything's about culture and amenities and things like that. You know, I'm not saying I want the city to have a free coffee bar and arcade inside of it, but you look at what people want. The generation now, the higher paid college graduate generations and stuff that make more money, it's all about what the amenities are, what the culture is. So,
thank you.
I think one of the things that I've been hearing a lot is potentially looking at how can we streamline our permitting process so that we can make these things happen in a more expedient way, more efficient way. So putting the rooftops will require us to potentially improve our permitting process, and I think we should really look at our policies that we have in place and update those policies, and potentially have another meeting with our stakeholders to figure out what is needed for us to get better as a city with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we have that note over there. Some things that the city is currently working on is updating our parking ordinance and updating our conditional use permit ordinance, particularly when it comes to expirations for our conditional use permits. They currently expire in 6 months, which is very, very, very short. City of Merced has a 5-year time frame. So, okay, so thank you for that. I think we covered a lot of ground with this financial piece. I think, yeah.
Before we move on, I just want to put my plug in as a finance director, because there are a couple tangible things that we can work on while creating the vision of future economic drivers, and the tangible things that are within our power is to continue on the sales tax, getting our full 1% Bradley Burns. That would have, in 23-24, it was about 239,000 that went to the county. So that could come back to the general fund for the city of Atwater. And the other tangible thing to look at as we're looking forward of future economic drivers and perhaps additional hotels is getting a TOT increase, should that be the desire of the governing body, in place before the hotels come. And so exploring the options of that. It's currently at 8%, looking at maybe, you know, raising it to 10%. And a lot of that comes with education. Sometimes with the cities that it doesn't pass, it's because the residents thinks it's going to be a tax on them. And it's important to know that it's not a tax on the residents, but it goes straight into the general fund to help have safe, attractive streets and other things that we want people to come in and stay in our hotels. So those are some really tangible things that we could be working on. Should the governing body desire to put that into our strategic plan, that I would be, that's just my plug as a finance director, of things we could work on now while looking, because it sounds like we're now evolving to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Jim.
I just, to John's point, he brought up really good points on development and stuff that when I was on the council that was drivers to and from, you know, getting stuff here. He's right about the income levels. They're light years apart. And one of the things why the populations and things are down there that aren't the same here is, and this is not something that the city can cure, but I brought this up before, we've got one hospital. And everybody, I think, has an opinion of how the service is at one hospital. We ship people out all the time. People that live over there, they can drive to that hospital. Or, you know, it's got a level of care over there that's better. About 15, 20 years ago now, it's been a while, but Merced was going to get a Trader Joe's. The Trader Joe's backed out. And the reason that they backed out was because there was too much credit card debt. That was another thing. When I was, again, on the council, I was wondering about getting either Cool Hand Luke's or Red Robin to come to Atwater. And it comes to find out that those that are already up in Stanislaus County, you know, and are getting patronized by people out of our city, the thing of it is they keep that data. Every time you pay with a credit card or an ATM card, that data of you goes in there, including your address. So they're saying, well, why would we want to go to Atwater and build? They're already coming to us here. So why would we do that? So it's kind of a two-way deal. And lastly, when it comes to Ferrari Ranch, you brought up about the AME and now the extension and everything else. You know, I heard that same argument when it was under construction right from the beginning. That, well, once we get the AME in here, then Ferrari Ranch is going to go nuts. And Brian will tell you, when we first came on the council, there was a hotel, a Microtel Hotel, that got approved over there. And it never came to fruition. I guess they had financial issues or something, I don't know, but everything was in place, ready to go. That was going to be basically the same, or the first thing to go in the Ferrari Ranch area. And one of the drawbacks to the Ferrari Ranch area right now for development is it doesn't have city services going over there, namely water, sewer, that kind of thing. So it's going to be tough to develop that. And I'm not sure how it would go, you know, whether it would have to be impact fees to, you know, offset that cost or whatever it would take. But also, it would take more fire protection. We heard that from CAL FIRE, and back in 2018, 2017, that fire protection for an area like that would be another issue. So there's, you know, to John's points, which are all excellent, you've got all of these factors, and it comes down to smart growth and how that is going to correlate with all those things that we talk about. But AME and the Ferrari Ranch, that was the case back then. It's not the case today with extending it out any further. It's freeway close, it's right there. It should be developed.
I agree. It's ready. There's already a junction on 99. I mean, it's a perfect location for prime development. It's already annexed, so, yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. Last thing about financial that I had collectively, talking with people, gathered this idea of we have some assets in the city. For example, there's an acre of land that's on Atwater, Jordan, and Applegate that the city got way back when and kind of slated it for a future fire station. I don't think that there's much plan, seems like, to expand south in that area by McSwain. So what do we do with this acre? I think we probably need to sell it because there's not much else to do. So we could go through the Surplus Lands Act. But that's just one example. Another is we have the trailer that the Community Development Department used to be in. What do we do with that?
So, Chris, I know that acre you're talking about, people farm it. Do we get any revenue from that at all?
No, not that we can see. We should. We should be getting something.
That we have the trailer next to City Hall, but I would like to potentially talk about, it is kind of in an awkward location, like to be next door to the City Hall, so what would you do with it, right? But I think about things that I would like to see there, and maybe some youth programs or something like that, in partnership with some of our community-based organizations. I think a lot of them, one of the things that they struggle with the most, it seems, is just having the brick and mortar. And I know that that's not going to bring revenue into the city, unfortunately, but I do think that our youth wellness is important. And so I would love to explore something like that.
To your point, I kind of agree. We have the youth center for that, though. I would sell it or lease it so we can have some kind of from it.
Okay. My handwriting's terrible, but I wrote Explore City Real Estate. We probably have something over there too, youth center. Okay.
Maybe the whole library too, they do like the meeting for nonprofit organizations.
Yeah. True.
The whole library, one library, where the chamber was, where the chamber was, it's open meetings, no, he's saying nonprofits will use it for free.
Okay. Well, anybody have anything else about financial solvency? We've covered a lot of ground. Yeah, Keith.
Just one thing, bringing in all these businesses and up and everything, who wants to come here if we don't increase the police department? They're understaffed now, they don't have enough people out there. So if I was to look at bringing a business out, the first thing I'm gonna look at the public safety. What can they provide me? Another thing I'm gonna look at, what does the city look like? You drive down Atwater Boulevard, it looks terrible. Unfortunately, the store or the scrapyard is right off the freeway where everybody sees. So it's kind of hard. We got to do everything at once, and not
True.
enough money to do it. But I think you have to look at the priorities, and I think public safety is a big one. And that brings me right back to Measure B. Is we really need to look at how that money is being spent, what it's being spent on, and I know. When we voted for this, the people voted for more police. That's what they needed, more police, and what comes with more police is equipment for those officers. That should be the priority of the city, of the council, not, and I don't want to keep harping on weight equipment. There's nice things to have, and there's things that we need.
And when it comes to Measure B money, we should look at what do we really need? And then hopefully down the future, when businesses come in here, we're making more money, we can get those nice things to happen.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, Robert?
In my experience, I'm from Fresno County, as you know. Worked there 35 years, but there was programs where, of course, you see Caltrans, they have people taking care of weeds and litter along the state highways. But the sheriff's office at one time had their trustees out doing litter control and weed control. And some of these things, maybe if you're already doing it, maybe so, but if you haven't explored that idea of upgrading, the appearance of certain locations, that may be a problem. Coordination with the county sheriff, and I'm not sure what the expense might be, but I wasn't aware that there was any interagency transfer of funds required for Public Works to have our disposal sites cleaned up from litter, blowing litter and so forth. So maybe that's something you could look at.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joe Hoffer. I'm also a commissioner with the Merced County Juvenile Justice Commission. And the probation department has a group that goes out and works on debris. They paint over graffiti. It's a great group of kids. Obviously, they're supervised by the probation officers, and that's an ongoing program. So I would suggest you contact the Merced County Probation. I think they've done some work here in Atwater, but they're available.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I will say that the probation department, I don't believe, provides graffiti abatement in cities, only the counties. So I do believe that they will probably be more than willing to engage in conversation with regard to like a community cleanup if we wanted to do something like that. I would also encourage like Love Atwater if we could think about going back that direction. I was involved in Love Atwater years ago. I thought it was great. But I think ultimately we can have people come and we can have, the youth clean up Atwater Boulevard, but we as a community need to take ownership of what's going on in our community. And if we don't get the community involved and engaged in cleaning up its own mess that we have made, then the mess will come right back.
Yeah, thank you. Love Atwater, that could fit under what we have for 6.6 from the old plan. It says support community cleanup and other beautification events and opportunities. And I think going back to the first part you were saying, and what Joe was sharing is some kind of partnership with county probation, see if we can, do some cleanup and have an agreement in place that they could, that we could work with them on that. Yes. So we'll make sure that we get that sort of thing like written down. It probably goes, Janelle, it probably goes under quality of life, if it's not there already, partnering with county probation on cleanups.
Chris, I'm not sure Love Atwater is an organization anymore.
The person that used to run Love Atwater was Gloria Perez, and she moved away, and they didn't have anyone fill in their shoes. So I don't believe that's even an organization anymore.
Yeah, so the Love Cities as a whole is a kind of like national almost. They've got cities all over the place. But if we're going to do something here, it's going to require a team effort with staff and community members that care about the city and want to volunteer to make it happen. I've participated in those sort of clean up your city things, Love City things, and it's always fun. You get T-shirts, you get people out there. You're doing a lot of projects, and it's a moment that the community can come together and like galvanize the support for making things look better. Any comments on that?
That's all fine and dandy, but I believe we spent like $50,000 to clean up the tournament, and it looks like crap again. Unless we have enforcement to hold these property owners responsible.
responsible to clean up their area, we're gonna just have another bill on our hands.
Yep. Yeah, it's a two-pronged approach, right? We do cleanups, but then we need code enforcement.
You know, as far as Atwater Boulevard, it's always looked pretty bad. There for a while, there were oleanders along Atwater Boulevard that somebody had cut down, so that way you can see the rest of the mess. I remember it was not this council, but I believe it was the Paul Creighton era, where they decided they were gonna mow it down, which was a waste, really. At least you didn't have to see the stuff on the other side of the oleanders.
Yeah, Robert?
Adopt a highway or adopt a street, and perhaps those are things that someone may take ownership on.
Okay, yeah, adopt the highway. Okay, great. So I'm gonna do a quick time check. We're a little more than halfway on our time, but we've got 5 out of 6 things to still cover. But I do really think, going back to what I said before, I do think that financial solvency one probably had a lot of the majority of the ideas here. So what I'd like to do is see if we can get through, and we've already had a lot of ideas shared about the other 5. So, and I'll read through them, and then we'll do the similar what we've been doing with the first section. When we get to the third, we'll take a break, and then we'll come back with. We'll see. I may want to skip this other thing just for just kind of a fun activity. But okay, let me keep going then. So promote safety and stability. I'm going to read what we have here. Spend Measure B money as intended. Community input. Cops. Spend Measure B funds as per the law. Continue to recruit and retain law enforcement. Ensure we are adequately staffed. Improve visibility of police on the streets and neighborhoods, so increase it. And look at priority calls and staff our police department accordingly. Use evidence-based decision-making strategies, like ideas from the Department of Justice. So this is great. So I want to share an idea that I had about some of the top ones over here when it comes to use Measure B money as intended. Here's the idea. The Oversight Committee has quarterly meetings. What if we had a template document that says, you know, here's some blank lines, and this is what the Measure B committee thinks as far as the expenditures that are being presented to it, whether they are being used appropriately as intended based on the public safety expenditure plan or not. And if I bring this document to each public safety, to each Measure B committee oversight meeting, I can get real-time input from them at the meeting, and we could have it agendized as this, looking at, to review this document and provide the yes/no on the items that are presented. And then write those things down, and that becomes the memo or the report that can be shown to the next council meeting. So that, like on a quarterly basis, every time this oversight committee meets, they can decide right then and there, you know, these are the expenses that are appropriate, and these are the ones that are not. And maybe there will be times that that there's no qualms, that everything appears good based on the public safety expenditure plan, but maybe there will be times that, hey, we want to call this out. We don't think that this was right, so we want to report this to the council. So in Measure B in the code, it says that the committee should be reporting at least annually to the council. Well, this would be on a quarterly basis, so this would be even, you know, more often than annually. And by doing this, let me just finish up the idea here. When it's presented to council, then council can look at it and say, yeah, you're right, and we're going to recode that expense that happened out of Measure B. We're going to recode that to the general fund to fix that. Yes, sir.
My question was, everybody says cops. How much does a cop cost per year?
So with the salary and the benefits and overhead and everything, it's over $100,000 for a police
I
officer.
mean, how much does it cost, what's the salary for a policeman?
About, I think the top range is about, or I think the range is around 88,000. I could look it up right here if you want.
So it's gonna be at least $150,000 per policeman, then you throw a car in.
Yeah.
You supply the weapon. I'm not
Right.
saying these are bad things, I'm just trying to get
A number.
a number to go with it, because you're saying we have $3 million coming from Prop B.
No, it's more than that. It's more like 5 million. But it's not just police, it's also fire.
It's fire. What's the fireman, how much does CAL FIRE cost per individual? I mean, I probably should be looking at somebody's budget, but I'm just curious to, so I mean, we don't like more cops, but, you know, I know they cost money and they cost, you know, you want quality people, so it's gonna cost you a quality price.
They don't pay for fire guys. They pay a contract.
No, but one of the
So
biggest
for
risks-
25-26, the CAL FIRE agreement is up to, it's 6 million, and there's some numbers after that, I don't have it memorized, but it's 6 million. So the agreement with CAL FIRE, it has a 5% escalator each year, so the current fiscal year was 5-point-some million, and then for 25-26, it's 6 million. So it's a service agreement, and within that are all the individual charges. So the city is entered into an agreement to pay up to that amount. It could come in less depending on which personnel are staffed. Each CAL FIRE personnel has their rate, and some are at, the contract is at top step, but you might have somebody placed that's at a lower step in the salary grade. But the projected contract amount is 6 million for the upcoming fiscal year.
As you go up in rank, they get paid more, right?
Correct, and that's included in that contract amount.
But I mean, even the police department has I'm saying it's great to say more cops, but I mean, it starts costing more and more money.
Correct, because there's,
Individuals
yeah.
that cost you at least $250,000, probably up to $500,000, depending on what their rate is.
Yeah, there's this, exactly. There's salary and benefits, but then there's the,
Doesn't take very long to get to.
Yeah.
You start multiplying by that people, you're only talking about 12 more cops.
yeah. And then there's risk management charges and everything else that, so the cost of a cop is more than the salary and benefits. It's the cost to outfit them, and then, you know, it's kind of a bittersweet with technology nowadays. Everything is technology driven with the laptops and everything, but that has to be upgraded, and so all of that comes at a cost too, so, yeah, a very good point.
Thank you. Yeah, Jim, the microphone's right behind you.
So what you brought up about doing the quarterly expenditure plan and that kind of thing, and having
Like a memo from the oversight committee meeting.
right. Well, and I'm not an attorney, obviously, and I don't play one, but the thing of it is, the ordinance says in there that the oversight committee does not have any decision-making or input, basically. It's specific in the ordinance. So, I mean, the ordinance needs modification, and that's one of them. I've always been a proponent of the oversight committee being able to function similarly to the planning commission, in that if a certain product or something needs to be purchased under the Measure B, then that would be recommended or whatever by the oversight committee, but not, you know, approved or disapproved or anything like the planning commission. But the problem that we have with this, like you said, is a yearly report. And, you know, the thing also is, and going back to the expenditures on Measure B, and to this gentleman's, you know, point, you know, it costs a lot to go and do one cop, and, you know, it's a patrol officer, and, you know, if he's $80,000-90,000 a year, or something like that, going back and looking at our expenditures from Measure B over the last year and a half, I mean, we spent $180,000 on the master plan. That's not an expenditure out of Measure B that's authorized in my estimation. Same for $50,000 for flooring for the police department, or a roof repair, and on and on. That's a couple of cops. And if we're gonna use that money for, in fact, public safety, then those types of expenditures have gotta be stricken. And, you know, the committee being able to, you know, communicate to the council, I think is an excellent idea. But I think it's gonna take the city attorney to get creative and modify that ordinance.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from.
Just one thing, we used to have a volunteers in the police department that did a lot of work that allowed the officers to do more safety stuff. Maybe we should look at bringing that volunteer program back to the city to alleviate some of the work that the officers are having to do now, where they can enforce, you know, the laws, which is going to bring revenue into the city.
Okay, thank you for that. But I think you had a comment.
Yeah, since we're on the topic, I was the person who wrote that last bullet point, so I just want to kind of make a point while we're on this topic. So if we're really looking at what best practices are, what I believe we should be doing is looking at our priority calls. And when I'm talking about priority calls, I'm talking about, you know, priority ones are your you know, lights and siren, emergency situation happening, right, Chief? Your priority 3 calls are, you know, the situation is not emergent, but nonetheless, an officer, you know, someone has called the police department to make a report. Correct, Chief? Thank you. Okay, and so what the city of Merced has done is really aligned with what the Department of Justice is telling us to look at, because the state of California changed its law that peace officers cannot, we can't employ peace officers, police officers, until they are 21 years of age. So that era of us hiring young 18-year-olds to be police officers and sending them to the post academy, those days are over. So we have to come up with better pathways for our police officers in our departments that will entice these young folks to stay engaged in criminal justice. And currently, as it stands, I believe we only have one community police officer. So the city of Merced really beefed up their program. It's good in that, you know, you can hire an 18-year-old to respond to those priority 3 calls. Those 18-year-olds can take those priority 3 reports. They can practice their writing skills, because when they're responding to those priority 1 calls, they need to be well trained, but they also need to be able to write. And if they can't write a good report, then that puts the city at a much higher liability. And so we need to create a pathway for these young people between the ages of 18 and 21 and say, hey, we're going to hire you to be a CSO. You can respond to the priority 3 calls. It's cheaper. They're not sworn peace officers, so they're not receiving the same type of benefits. But what they would have is potentially the promise from the city that if you pass the Pellet B, we will sponsor you to go through the academy. And then those young people ages 20, between the ages of 18 and 21, they have something to look forward to. And we are training them well. And the majority of the calls that our officers are responding to, if you look at the data, are priority 3 calls. So we are tying up our officers' time responding to these. We do have online reporting, but some folks want an officer to respond to their home. We have, you know, a large elderly population who don't want to do online reporting, and they want an officer to come to their house. And so, and I'm sure that our officers are doing that, but we're also tying them up by having them respond to those priority 3 calls, whereas we could have some CSOs doing that to free up our officers to be able to respond to the priority 1s and then potentially even join teams, right? because then we have, you know, more availability. So that's my 2 cents, and I'll get off my soapbox now.
Thank you for that.
One question for Councilmember Chester. We used to have an Explore program here, and I don't think we have that no more. Can they take these kind of reports also between that age, between 18 and 21? Or, I'm not sure how the Explore program, if it only has certain ages or.
We're kind of talking about two different things, but to dovetail off of what you talked about, we've had someone that's been on light duty for several months now, and so we've had that person in the station taking those type of calls, and it really does benefit the department, and it keeps the officers out on patrol where they're not having to come in and take these type of calls. So I agree 100%. And additionally, the one community service officer that we do have, he takes non-injury traffic collisions and does other things like that. So yeah, that's definitely a benefit to a department, and it is a cheaper way to go. And like you said, it does kind of get people's foot in the door.
And to your point, Keith, like, even if we couldn't use those Explorers for taking those priority 3 reports, because there is still some liability attached to that, what we could potentially use the Explorers for is traffic. When we have these traffic accidents, I see, you know, these older Explorers helping with traffic and directing traffic. And whereas right now, I see our police officers having to stand out there and do that. Well, while they're doing that, that takes a cop off the streets. And so we just need to think about things like that and how maybe we could maximize what we have, but potentially think about if we are going to expand our department. I will tell you that from a criminal justice standpoint at Merced College, we saw a huge decrease. I mean, we even had to cancel an academy because our young people are not engaged in wanting to be police officers because they're being told to go away and come back when you're 21 years old. So what's happening between the ages of 18 and 21 for those folks who don't want to go to college? So that is a huge issue.
And by movement, have an Explorer to move from that level to the next level to CSO to the next level as police officers, we'd be money ahead.
I'd also like to add that our community service officer, we recently sent him to reserve training so that he could transport prisoners that are in custody. So that prevents an officer from having to be gone for several hours between the medically clearing process and the booking process. So that's another benefit of having CSOs that can do things like that and keep the beat officers here in town.
I want to say something about the Explorers. The Explorers, for the most part, did a great job, and it's a great idea. The reason why they're no longer Explorers in Atwater is because the leaders were very corrupt. The money that they were obtaining was going right back into their pocket. And I had to go in and evaluate. I evaluated their books, went through with Chief Salvador, and he's like, I'm not going to endorse those guys. There's no way I'm going to endorse those guys. The Explorers are great to learn that. We've seen that at Merced County. They're brought up in learning what they were doing, but their leadership failed. Now, if we could find leadership to be able to get that Explorer program running, I'd be all for it. I'd be screaming from the top of my lungs, let's use those guys. But they couldn't because of the corruptness.
Well, thanks for that. And that's it. Let's not just do away with the program. Let's get the right people in there to run the program the right way.
I got a point that the chief. Hello? Okay. Hello? The chief is right on, and so is Kalisa, that we need to get the CSO, more CSOs, again, that pathway, that Kalisa is very famous for saying the word pathway, and also some more volunteers. Back in the day, I was on the department and I actually ran the Cadet Explorer program, and they go up to the age of 18. So the 18 to 21 wouldn't work for them. And remember, these are young people, that can work parades, they can do all this other stuff, but on a daily basis, they can't really help. So I think the best course of action, the money for our buck for our money, however that's said, is that go with the CSOs if you can, and then also increase your volunteer staff. John, I was 100% behind the cadets or the explorers, and they're good. I mean, down the road, if that's possible to get that up and running, that's great. But as far as manpower, if you will, we would have to go with the CSO and also the volunteers.
And to everybody's point, the explorers are, I think, just one component of what we need to do. When, years ago, well, not too many years ago, but at least back in 2016, 2015, yeah, that's years ago, we had a pretty good volunteer police force here. And these are made up of not the kids, but, retirees and that type of thing. And boy, that was impressive. We had several incidents, like when that tanker rolled over by the AMPM and blew up, and all those roads were cut off. If something like that happened today, that would take maybe half a dozen cops, to go out and block and keep people out of there. We can't do that. So the idea of having a volunteer police unit is extremely important. For traffic control and situations like that, major auto accidents, whatever. Pick a topic, but that's got to be one of those things. And I think probably out of the Measure B funding, I would be 100% in favor of something like that, as well as again looking at Measure B funds as an incentive program to recruitment. If it takes a couple grand to go and put in somebody's hand and say, hey, come be a cop in Atwater, why not use Measure B funds for something like that?
Thank you.
Can I also add real quick? Our chaplain program is up to about, I think, 6 or 7 now, and we just met with them recently, and they're looking to get more involved and get out there and do more things like that. So we're looking forward to getting them out there and training them a little bit, having them help us out.
Speaking again regarding Measure B, when we campaigned to get this thing passed, we told everybody that lived within the city limits, taxpayers, the voters, it was to hire more police officers because we were down. But not one officer has been hired since that passed. And these folks remind us daily when we see them, maybe in the store or just whatever, I thought you said you were gonna hire more police officers. And kind of makes us look like we lied to them. Instead, the money was spent on other things. And I agree that, firefighters need equipment, exercise equipment, just like police officers do. Take it out of the general fund, just like this PERS bill. Pay that out of the general fund. Don't take it out of Measure B. That's where we need to get our manpower, please.
Thank you. Okay. So one of the things that we already covered, but I just want to touch on real fast, is in the old plan, the one 5 years ago, 2.1.B, it says explore potential public support for a public safety tax. Obviously that already passed, so we can cross that off our list. Oh, so, yeah, go ahead.
Before we move on from public safety. Okay, so one of the things Chris and I this past week we discussed is the one of the budget items that came up at when you were presented the draft budget, and paying off the Type 1 fire engine out of Measure B. And so we went back to the drawing board and thought, okay, what can we do? We're listening, what can we do? And so we will be presenting in the final budget to council. We've moved the payoff of that into the general fund with the reasoning of preserving some of the Measure B fund balance so that as more policy comes forward, there's still some fund balance reserved there to help you in guiding your policy. There was something that came out today about wanting a 25% reserve, and so it just gives a little bit more breathing room and more, preserves some of the fund balance, quite honestly. The difficult part is Measure B is built out in terms of your ongoing expenses and ongoing revenues. So I can't in good faith say add ongoing expenses and start running a structural deficit there. But what we can do is move that cost at $634,000 to complete the purchase of the Type 1 fire engine. We're going to have the general fund pay that in the 25-26 budget instead of Measure B. And so as time goes on, as the strategic plan moves forward, and as more policy is developed with Measure B, there's a little bit of fund balance left there. So that's one of the changes. And then from a budgetary standpoint, through the course of strategic plan, if like one of the directives is to explore the cost of a community services officer as opposed to police officers, those are things in the coming months we can look at, and then look at what the ongoing cost would be to add that. And then at mid-year, we could always do an assessment of what are our expenses and what are our revenues. The one thing I know I mentioned this before, but that CAL FIRE agreement, at the time in Measure B, it was a pretty significant leap in cost that's taking up some of that. But there usually is some savings in the CAL FIRE agreement. But we're so new into that enhanced agreement that it's hard to say you can feel comfortable in knowing you're going to save this amount. We just can't provide that level of comfort yet. But what we can say is over the last 2 years of the agreement, typically we run under the full agreement amount, which is great, but we are on the hook for that full agreement amount. So committing to more ongoing expenses without knowing if that's always going to be a trend would be a little risky. So just wanted to update you on that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just a couple other ideas before we move on from public safety. Sounds like, okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Myra.
And I'm not sure if this is something that would be answered, but I think there's been there's been a lot of good ideas, but a couple that have been mentioned with the fire cost, benefit analysis, and then also the CSO. Is there a commitment that someone's going to, in the near time, look into those two possibilities?
The first one was explore in-house fire personnel, and what was the second one you just said?
The CSO, the community service officers,
Yep.
what Merced has going on?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Is there a commitment? I mean, those are great ideas that can be beneficial in multiple ways,
Yeah.
so I
We've
guess
got
I'm
both-
just asking.
We have those both written down here.
So as I'm asking, like,
Yeah, I
will
mean,
something be done in the near time of conversations so that it doesn't take a long time, but these are things that could be immediately looked at? I guess that's my question. I'm not sure if there's an answer that can be given to that, but I'm wondering.
Well, the CSO one is probably a smaller bite to eat than looking at an in-house fire it's a heavier lift, but it's something that the council, I'm hearing from council and from the public, that's something that we could explore. So yes, that goes in the plan. That's a commitment that we're making. Of course, this is a 5-year plan, but it doesn't mean that it takes 5 years to look at this stuff. And we can only do so much with the resources that we have, but that's why we have this plan, is to prioritize what staff needs to be working on. So yes, there's a commitment to look at that, yes.
So you evidently had 600-some thousand allocated for paying off this fire engine to come out of Measure B for this year, right? And you're going to be moving that over to the general fund, is that correct?
Yes.
Then why not put in 2 CSOs to come out of Measure B?
So that would be, you want to,
So taking us back to Tuesday night when I presented the Measure B budget, if you look at the estimated revenues coming in and the estimated expenses, The expenses were quite a bit more than the revenues, and so I showed the one-time cost. One was the $634,000 for the Type 1 fire engine and $30,000 for fire equipment replacement. So there's $664,000 of one-time cost, and when you take that out, and that basically one-time cost is using fund balance. So when you take that out of the expenses, the ongoing expenses that are projected for 25-26 equal the ongoing revenues. So in order to add additional ongoing expenses, you're going to inherit a structural deficit just like the general fund. And that would be a policy decision that, you know, the governing board would have to say you're going to have a structural deficit like the general fund. And that's very risky, and I wouldn't advise that. And I think that's something that through this strategic planning process, the council can decide on their reserve policy and when it's appropriate, if ever, to run a structural deficit. But to answer your question, that money is one-time cost using fund balance. And so removing that from the equation, the fund is balanced based on the estimated revenues and expenses.
I really think that it would behoove the council and the city staff to at least put one CSO in your budget. That's going to be one officer that you've hired thanks to Measure B. Because right now you're looking like you have mud on your faces. If you would walk down the street or go into a residence and ask for support, and I know you mentioned raising this tax a little bit, they'd run you out of town, I can guarantee you. Because we haven't provided anything for our taxpayers for all this money that you've been getting, millions of dollars. Not one police officer, nothing. You've had trainings, you've had a plan, you've paid past due bills that you should not have paid for. You've paid for things that should have come out of general fund. But Measure B, it's just like you've all been turned loose in a little candy store. So it doesn't look good to you. It doesn't look good. We all look like liars, I'll be honest. We lied to the public. We said, we'll put officers on the street. Instead of that, you paid off past due bills and so forth.
The one thing that I will say is from this current budget, we are going to, well, we have not voted as a body yet, but it is in proposed, I believe, $68,000 for a mechanic to work on the fire trucks. So I'm wondering if we did a cost-benefit analysis of having our own in-house mechanic. I guess we're splitting that with the county, that mechanic, because that is an added cost, and that's an ongoing to our Measure B, and that is around $68,000. So that is something I would just like to raise.
Yeah, so what we observed is we have a fire engine, fire truck that goes in for annual checkup and sit there for 2 months out of town. That's not useful to us. We can't use it because it's in the shop for 2 months. I got the financial amounts for how much it would cost in parts and labor to do to have that third party, like in Modesto or Oakdale, do repairs versus hiring half of an FTE at the county as a mechanic to help us out over there. And it was fairly close in that amount, but the benefit is that we're going to have a much better response time in getting those repairs done and those checkups done, so that we're not wasting 2 months, for example, of having an engine out there.
I do worry about us engaging in agreements with the county when we can't get the county to come to the table to talk about the tax. And so now we're going to split a mechanic with the county, and I just wonder and hope that that mechanic that we're paying for would take our fire engines just as serious and want to get our fire engines returned to us at the same rate as the counties. That's what I'm saying, and that I worry about engaging in agreements with the county for that reason.
If we get to the point where we're unhappy with the agreement, then we can back out of it. I think it's like a 30-day period of time that we could back. So it's in draft form, and the plan is to bring that forward to the council to look at. So you'll have a chance to check that out.
Would that be a maintenance facility at council that you're talking about?
Yes. So the idea is, I didn't want to bring that agreement preemptively before before the council makes a decision in the budget on that, and then tie the council's hands on that. So it would be concurrent.
I'll just tell you that outfit out there, I've watched it now for 2-3 years, and they're overwhelmed with county trucks. So I don't think you're gonna get any better response out of there than you would wherever you go.
Well, I just know CAL FIRE had a specific mechanic they were gonna be using for the Rosenbauer trucks. So that's the only difference, I think. But again, they're still dealing with the county.
Yeah.
I have one last thing, and I'll keep my mouth shut. $180,500 came out of Measure B for a public safety master plan. Can you give us an update on that plan?
Yeah, we're going to bring it to council. There were some questions that came up that we wanted to look at. So we've looked at that, and we can bring that public safety master plan back for council review, and that could happen in June or July.
What's the extra cost to go and redo the revisions? Is there an extra cost?
There would be an extra cost to.
Do you know how much that is?
No, I don't know how much that would cost. It wasn't, doing the revisions past what we've done is, would be outside the scope of that agreement. Okay, all right, so a couple more ideas on public safety. We don't talk much about, in the old plan, in the 5-year plan, from 5 years ago, traffic enforcement. So what does everyone think about strengthening traffic enforcement, and should that be one of our priorities? I'm seeing some nodding heads. Okay, so I'll write that on there. Yes, sir.
Being that I ride a motorbike, yes. I didn't know the red light was a 5-second thing.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say, we interviewed for the traffic position last week, and we've selected an officer. We've talked with the Merced PD motor unit, and they are willing to let our guy come out and train with them. So he's going to start riding the bike probably next week or the week after, just in time for the heat of the summer. But we're getting him fitted for his equipment, and he's going to start training with them. And they'll prepare him to go to the motor school, which is pretty brutal. So, you know, they want to make sure that you're able to ride a bike on patrol safely, not just riding a bike. So once he gets through all that, then he will be out there working traffic. And so we're really looking forward to having that position filled.
And I saw Merced was getting lights, cameras on their lights. Is that something that Outwater's thinking about doing?
When I first got here, that company did reach out to me. I told them that I've got other projects that I'm prioritizing for now, but I would revisit that later. So I haven't really had those discussions, but we have been in contact with them.
Do they make a noticeable difference on the safety of the streets having cameras?
You know, they were a big thing for a while, and I always wondered how they were going to hold up in court. And then cities seemed to stop putting them in as much. And so I thought maybe they weren't going so well in court. But I hadn't really heard, good or bad, one way or the other, any kind of traffic data on whether they're helping or not.
I'm more worried about the safety issue than I am the revenue issue.
Right, but if people know that they're not being enforced, then they're not going to abide by them. So they've obviously got to be enforced and upheld in court in order for them to be effective.
Does the city still own motorcycles?
Yes, we have 3 motorcycles, 1 gas BMW and 2 electric Zero bikes. He'll be riding the BMW primarily, and that's just came out of the shop recently. It's all been worked on, and everything's in tip-top shape. So,
Cool. And then last thing that we were thinking about is strengthening cybersecurity. I want to make sure that we're prepared, that we have all the latest and greatest software, so we can avoid problems like some cities get ransomware attacks. Those are very scary, and we need to be prepared for that. So,
Not, yeah, okay, all right. Okay, so we got this last, section 3 on this side of the wall, and it's about communication. So in the plan from 5 years ago, we noticed that in 3.1 and 3.2, it says proactively communicate positive news and use social media to disseminate positive news. Well, sometimes the news isn't positive. So we're thinking maybe we strike the word positive, because sometimes we have to tell people, you know, what's what. We have to say, you know, we're going to close this road. I'm sorry, this is not going to be good for you, but we have to do it. We're doing construction, or you know, any number of different things. So that's just a bit of a nuance that we were thinking could make an improvement, because we got to tell the good, bad, and the ugly, everything. I'm going to read these over here. Improve sound and video quality for meetings. There have been a couple meetings where it's a little hard to hear. I really like this microphone. Hopefully everything's working out with this, but yeah, we could look at that. And we've got reach out, move to residents. Oh, sorry, reach out more to residents for their involvement. One thing that I've just started this week is a kind of city manager meetup, and I'd like to continue doing that, where you know, different restaurants or different establishments just showing up and you know, putting it on social media, and you know, kind of open house forum. Just come on in and we'll talk, and I'll listen, we'll take notes. I got a lot of good ideas from the last one this week about you know, our water sewer garbage rates, and ways that we could collect money differently, and it's kind of opened my eyes to like new possibilities. So that's one thing that we could do. Okay, does anybody have any other comments on that?
I just want to compliment Janelle on her social media posts, or I'm sorry, both. I think you're doing a wonderful job, and I really like how we're highlighting staff. I think it humanizes our staff a lot, and it just brings more of a personal touch. And I do appreciate that very much. So thank you both. I just want to compliment you on that, and for our staff for being, you know, willing to pose for some of these pictures. I struggled with that when I was at probation. Like, getting probation officers to pose for pictures was like pulling teeth. So I just think staff and you guys are doing a great job with the social media posts, and I would just encourage you to keep it going.
Can you hear me? Oh, there. Chris and I had a discussion yesterday about this very same topic here. You know, we have social media in town. We have the utility newsletter, for what it's worth. We have the Atwater Times, for what it's worth. We don't really have a media market here. We don't have any TV, radio maybe. But one of the things I did learn at one of the Cal Cities conferences was about using podcasting. And we were talking about, like, you want to know more, you know, these nice people here want to know more about the budget. Well, Chris could have a discussion with Anna and do like a 15, 20-minute segment about, this is how city municipal budgets work. Could talk with Justin about, how does the road tax work and all that? How do we get streets striped? Different, a variety of different topics that could then be pushed out on social media, and people could watch them at their leisure. You don't have to come to the meeting. You can go back and archive them and look at them that way. And I don't think the cost on that would be all
I mean, we've got the camera right there, so.
We're already working on it.
We've got the tripod. Yeah, Danny?
So the podcast and social media is not a bad idea, but are we going to be looking into partnering up with the high schools or the community college and trying to get interns over that could actually help out? Would be a benefit for them and a benefit for the city, because it'll be a lot cheaper that way.
Yeah, actually, we do have in section 5, the promote economic development, partner with 5.4, partner with local educational / academic institutions. And that could be a lot of things. We could do a job fair, we could do an internship program, like you're saying, a number of things, yeah.
Can I just add one more thing
Yeah.
to that? Just a also ensuring that, like with our, if we can with our posts, to have them translated so that when we share them, others can access them. And then if we do something like a podcast, which I think is a great idea, so that we can go back and listen. And I don't know how that might work to have those interpreted, but as far as how that could work, but just so that we are extending that to all of our residents
Yeah.
who also need it in a language other than English.
Cool. So I'm gonna do English, Spanish translations, right?
Asian, long,
Okay.
long, Hindu.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've been at this for a little bit, so why don't we take a 4-minute break, and then we'll come back.